Yeah, welcome. My name is Jeff Dickey. I've been a web developer for a long time. I've worked with .NET quite a bit, actually. Worked on a lot of different stuff. I've been a web developer for 10 years. I got into Node probably a year and a half ago, and I've been really enjoying it. I've done a lot of scale kind of things in my career, so I know quite a bit about that. And so what I thought is I'd tell you guys a little bit about some quick little tips and tricks of things I've learned that have been specific to Node that have helped me a lot. I'm an engineer for Heroku. I just started like 3 weeks ago, and right now I'm rewriting the current Ruby CLI in Go, which has nothing to do with this talk, but I think it's cool, so I bring it up. Heroku, I imagine most of you know who they are. If you don't, we run very large platforms as a service to host apps. So we host really anything that run Linux, Ruby, PHP, Java, Node, whatever. We can host it, make it easy, so you don't have to deal with servers. Today, we're going to talk about 3 things. I think I can make this talk a lot longer, but I figured let's just talk about some specific things. You guys have some takeaways, hopefully, of things you can do to improve your code bases. I want to talk about PACKAGE.JSON, specifically the script section of that, which was actually shown a little bit in the last talk. Node cluster, which is my favorite thing in Node, although PACKAGE.JSON is also my favorite, so I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. I'm going to talk about logging, because I think that logging is a good place you can get some easy, quick wins in most Node code bases. So let's get going. So about PACKAGE.JSON. We're also going to see our buddy Mark Twain up here, not for any particular reason other than I was reading Mark Twain quotes, and he's awesome. So if my talk sucks, at least you can take these home with you. NPM start. So NPM start is a deceptively simple technique feature in NPM. Have anybody guys, do you guys use it? Raise your hand. So not many people. Oh, this is good. Oh, man. So npm start is just a way to say what command gets run if you type npm start into the command line. That's it. It sounds so simple. And here what I have it do is run node boot.js. As you guys know, most HTTP server Node apps will run a file called server.js. And actually, if you just type npm start and you don't have this configured, that's what it'll do. So setting this up is a good way to provide sort of a canonical declaration of how to run an app. So when you use these things in tandem, you'll see how it kind of comes together. But really, it's just a way to be like, I don't know anything about this Node app, but I know if I type npm start, it should run whatever that Node app is. In a similar vein is npm test. Exactly the same idea. Type npm test, it's going to run this thing. It's actually no different than npm start, except in how you use it, of course. You use this to run your full test suite. So here I do 3 things. I hit JS hint to lint my code to make sure that people aren't putting in semicolons. And then I run Mocha and Protractor to run some front-end tests. And I imagine not all of you know Bash enough to know what this and means. What that means is if the thing on the left returns a 0 status code, then do the thing on the right, and so on and so forth until they all execute. So this is just a way to run a full test suite. So no matter how many different steps you have in your test suite, you can represent it here. And this is way cleaner than putting into Grunt, which you might have like a Grunt test. This is much easier to use and makes for a more componentized code base. Not that there's anything wrong with Grunt, just this is simpler. And if you're using Gulp for that, you're doing it wrong. I love Gulp. That Gulp is a build system. It's not a task runner. So npm POSTINSTALL. This is a little different than the last 2. So npm POSTINSTALL just gets run after npm install. So if I run this code, then what it's going to do is I pull down some Git repo. It's got a bunch of stuff in it. And I do npm install to get all my dependencies. And then this is going to run to both get all the Bower scripts and also compile all my CSS and JavaScript. Because it's not good to check those in the code base. It makes the code base grow. It's kind of ugly. So this is just a way to set that up. And developers getting it doesn't even know that you're using Gulp. Doesn't even know you're using Grunt. Doesn't even know how to, any of the build stuff works. So they'll just get it and be able to run. So if you're doing this right, I should be able to get your Node app, following the Node conventions, just like this. Clone it app, npm install, That in turn is going to do some asset compilation craziness, but you don't know that. npm test, make sure the whole test suite passes, and npm start, and I'm off and running. So you should try, if you can, to get your app to run in this way. And the advantage there is that it's just really easy for anybody to jump in your project and be able to work. If you only work on one project for your entire career, then this doesn't apply, but I hope that's not the case. How are we doing on time? OK. So this is just kind of a fun one. So if NPM is an acronym, why was it capitalized? Imagine it wasn't capitalized in this bad font choice in hindsight. Do you guys know the answer to this? This is in this official FAQ. So I'll read it out. Contrary to the belief of many, NPM is not in fact an abbreviation for Node Package Manager. It is a recursive backronymic abbreviation for NPM is not an acronym. If it was Nina, then it would be an acronym and thus incorrectly named. This is the most helpful definition I've ever seen. Back to Mr. Twain here. He's my favorite. Isn't he good? You guys ever read it? He is good. All right, so Node cluster, my second favorite thing in Node. So Node cluster is a way to run multiple processes. So you can have a bunch of processes running of your Node environment. And it uses Unix sort of built-in socket stuff to load balance automatically. So there's actually like not that much code in Node cluster. It just uses like the stuff that's in Unix to make this work. Now, if that sounds confusing, what that means is you can run multiple Node servers at the same time in the same box with very little setup. And this is important because I've worked on a lot of Node projects, people that didn't know Node, and the number one problem I've seen is it's written in a single process model. And what that means is that then when I want to take this to production and I want to put it on multiple servers, I can't because it's written to run in a single process. Namely things like if you have like a WebSocket channel, like it'll just broadcast everything on that process, whereas it needs to bump up to like Redis or something on a pub sub thing to broadcast to all the processes in the system. And so I've had to re-architect 2 apps now that didn't have this set up, and it was a big pain in the ass. So that might be confusing if you're new to Node, and I apologize, but what I'm trying to get at is it's important to be running multiple processes when you're developing your app, otherwise you'll be in for hurt later. So the way that I set this up in my apps is I have a file boot.js, which runs server.js in turn. So boot.js is the master, and he's going to fork off a bunch of server.js's. So I could run server.js directly, but that would just run a single version of my app, or I can just run boot.js. So I said it's easy to use. This is how it works. So here, I'm just getting Node cluster. And this is built in. This isn't a package you install. It's built in the core. And I'm declaring that server.js is the sort of worker file. And I'm forking off 3 processes. And so all of those will be load balanced properly, and they'll just be listening. And if one dies, the other 2 will take over. Don't worry about any dropped requests. Everything just works. Notably, when those forks happen, it doesn't reuse the existing code. It reads the newest code. So right here, I'm doing them all once at a time. But if I like did a set timeout here and did something like 2 minutes later, it's going to get the latest code on the system. So you might know what I'm getting at here, which is this leads to zero downtime deploys. Because if you fork something like days after something is launched, it's going to get the new code there. So zero downtime deploys in Node are super easy. And compared to something like Unicorn and Ruby, like Unicorn's great, but it's a easy model, not a simple model. If you guys know Rich Hickey, if you haven't, go watch Ricky talk. Unicorn's easy. It's easier to use in this, but it's not simple. You can't compose it. This is super composable. So this is like zero downtime deploys in Node. That's it. No libraries, no nothing. Listen for the single hang-up event. Once I get that, just iterate over each worker, tell it to disconnect, and fork off a new one. What disconnect's going to do is it's going to not take any new connections on that socket. It disables the accept to function from being called. And then what it'll do is it'll just have a bunch of new ones start up, and then the old ones, once their requests are on is dying, we'll get rid of. Now, admittedly, you need to do a little bit more than this. Like, this is just going to do it all at once, like all processes. You should do like a rolling thing. But I have the code. It's like with tons of comments. It's like 100 lines of code. that has like all this stuff done in a really proper way. So I encourage you to look it up. I'll send a link to it if I can. But yeah, that's Node cluster. So logging. So logging, I think, is logging is important. And we use like stud out a ton when we're writing our Node apps, right? Like we do like CONSOLE.LOG all the time. But it's important to know like what that means when you say console.log. Now, for most apps, this probably doesn't matter a whole lot, but certainly if you're a maker or if you have something even remotely intense, then it can. The biggest problem with console.log is it's synchronous. Like when you say console.log, then that process is totally locked up until that thing goes out to the whatever stud out's connected to, the console, whatever. That might not be too bad, but this is Node. We don't like blocking. We don't like waiting for something to happen, especially something useless like text to appear somewhere. So I don't take this the wrong way. I think console.log is fine to use. Like use it. I use it all the time. I use it for almost all the stuff I do. But if I'm doing something that's going to be performance intensive, then it's not that great. The other thing is it doesn't have like some of the meta stuff you'll see in the other loggers that I'm going to talk about. So my favorite logger is WINSTON. So WINSTON is just as easy to use as console.log. I mean, aside from the fact you have another dependency in there, but it's asynchronous, of course. And it can also do like some metadata. So you want to say like this is the request ID for this log, stuff like that. You can do some simple profiling, like how long does this database call take, stuff like that. And it's really the best logger out there as far as human readability. It's much faster than console.log, and it has a lot of support. Even like you can do like fancy transport, so you want to send out to like syslog or even level.db. You can do that really easy. Kind of contrasting that, this is the one that Joint suggests is BUNYAN. So BUNYAN is definitely the most advanced logger that I know about there, and it's really almost the opposite of WINSTON, whereas it emphasizes machine readability. And as you guys will find out, like there's a lot of debates over like what the right way is to log. Some people say use timestamps. Some people say never use timestamps. And some people say use JSON. Some people say don't use JSON. So like, I don't know. I'm just giving you guys the options here. BUNYAN's like not human readable at all. It just like outputs JSON, which is awful. Like JSON's fine to read like one web request though, but like if you've ever seen a log of JSON, it's completely useless. But it has like super advanced features. Like you can like use dtrace to like turn on verbose log in a production box and like get all the like verbose logs while it's running. So like if you're running a big intensive system, like Maker probably, like I don't know what they use, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's BUNYAN or if they're looking at BUNYAN. And kind of demonstrate that, like if you just like log some stuff out, you get this ugly JSON. But it comes with this BUNYAN tool that you can just pipe stuff into to get nice, clean, readable logs. Speaking of dtrace, like I'm not going to talk about a whole lot here, but dtrace is built into Node. You already have it, and it can do some really neat, like live production sort of metrics about your system. And with this code here, which I won't get into, it's not code, that was Bash, but you can get a flame chart like this to really drill down. Like this is something you can run on production, like on a running system. Be like, why is my thing slow? Dtrace, I'll tell you. Yeah, so how are we doing on time? We got time? Okay. I got a couple more, so we'll see if we can get to that. Some more resources. I'll put these slides up so you guys can see them, but the Joint Production Practices is my Bible. It is the best guide on how to run Node in production there is, probably with good reason since it's joint. But it's great. If you're running Node in production, you should read it, everything in it. Also, 10 Habits of a Happy Node Hacker. This is by Zeke. He used to work at Heroku, but now he's working for NPM. And it's just like 10 quick little trips like that PACKAGE.JSON I showed to make your Node life better. And then my article, Node.js in production, which was sort of how this talk came to be, but that article is actually totally different. That article is about like how to get a DigitalOcean cluster set up with load balancing and Ansible and kind of stuff like that. So if you want like a how-to guide, check it out. I also have a book coming out. Go buy it. It's on how to write mean JavaScript applications, Mongo, JS, Express.js, AngularJS, and Node. It's coming out September 30th, and I put a lot of work into it. So if you guys do pick it up, hit me up on Twitter, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Also, I wouldn't be doing my company service. I didn't mention that we're hiring. If you want to come literally build the cloud, come talk to me. I work remote. Well, the company's in San Francisco, but 50% of the company is remote. We're a small team, probably 110 people, but we do a lot of stuff. A lot of JavaScript. We're working Ember right now and a lot of front-end JavaScript stuff. With that, I want to thank you guys. But since I think I cruised through this, I actually was prepared with a couple bonus slides. I'll just show one. Oh, no, I don't. I lied. I'll mention it, though. So when things go wrong, and they eventually do when you're working with Node in production, one thing that we do at Heroku that I love is called the 5 whys analysis. So 5 whys is something you do during a retrospective after things go wrong and you're in that meeting, and the big heads are there why did this thing go wrong? This can never happen again. And you want to find out what was the root cause. We like to do the 5 whys analysis, and it takes a long time. I expect this to take an hour or two to figure out the 5 whys, but you basically just ask why something went wrong 5 levels deep. So if you ask why did the car break down? You might say, well, because battery died. So well, why the battery died? Well, alternator's not working. Well, why is the alternator not working? And eventually you get to the point where you find out, oh, we missed a service appointment for the car. We should have done that. So it's just a way to really dive down into what went wrong. So something I suggest that you do, more of a human level, but equally useful.
Speaking of questions.
Don't ask me why. Yeah?
Questions?
Yeah.
T-Trace, how does that look in Linux?
Well,
Repeat the question.
I'm trying to remember, is it built into Ubuntu? Debian stuff?
As I understand, they have a non, it's not 100%, not like you were going to use, your deployment journals or something like that with SmartOS.
You're right, yeah.
But they want a subset. I've tried it in good faith, but I never got it working very well.
So I apologize, I read this talk. I actually tried it on my OS 10 box and it worked great. But yeah, because OS 10 has dtrace. So I guess I don't know about what OS support is, but yeah.
Dtrace works really good on SmartOS for joint. It doesn't work on Linux.
Yeah.
At all, on any of them? Dang.
No, there's various ways you can debug Node apps in Linux, but they're very archaic
Dtrace
and low level.
Yeah.
You don't have access to the utilities of Dtrace.
Good to know.
Brendan Gregg, who was formerly of Joyent and is now at Netflix as an architect for performance, just did a talk at LinuxCon on cool tools in Linux, and he's a dtrace fan, but because he went to Netflix, it's just Linux and FreeBSD there. So he has a great talk, and just went up this week with a lot of tools.
You can use a lot of tools like strace and things like that, but they don't bridge the gap between Node and the OS.
Yeah, because these flame charts, you don't even have to configure anything in your app. You just get it. It's free. It's amazing. So that's too bad.
That's what Mac was saying. He didn't actually install anything.
That wasn't. I did some tests to make sure, yes, this works, but I didn't do it on Linux. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
On cluster, now this was a while ago, and I didn't do too scientific of performance testing, but I found that running a machine with multiple nodes or multiple processors with cluster is not quite as performant as doing just 2 single core machines. Do you have any experience with that, or?
Oh, well, that's probably true. Well, yeah, if you have 2 boxes, that would be faster than running a single box with multiple processors. But I do believe, I might be totally wrong, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that JavaScript has a GIL, right? So if it has a GIL, then it can't run multiple things on multiple processors. So if you have a box and it has 8 cores, you're going to want 8 node processes running, right?
Right, but I'm saying if you had the choice of running an 8-core box versus 8 machines because it costs effectively the same, You
You'd be,
might
yeah.
run eight machines. Like,
So you're right. You would be probably better off performance-wise if you're running the same machine on 8 bucks, although I doubt it would be cheaper. But you want to max out your cores. But I would always run at least 2. Because like, you never know when you're going to get some runaway request or something that's going to be eating up the CPU. And at least you have kind of a buffer there of this other process that's running. The CPU can schedule that a little bit. I mean, like I'm talking like a disaster scenario that shouldn't happen anyways. But I don't know. That's what I always think
that
about.
makes sense.
But,
I like your node downtime deployment too. Yeah.
yeah, it's Node Cluster is just a really well-designed tool, and you can use it to do things. Like I would just use it. I just default to using it in Node apps. And really the biggest reason I want to use it is so I don't have other developers on my team writing code that can't run on multiple machines. Because that happens all the freaking time in Node. I don't know why, but it does.
So, does cluster, if a process dies or a script dies, will it restart it?
No, but it's very easy. All you have to do is it uses event emitter, so you say like worker.on disconnect, and it'll just like do a reconnect. So if you look at my boot.js script, it does all this. It's really well commented. It's super easy.
Oh, yeah, another thing. You're missing semicolons.
Oh, I didn't notice.
Hey now.